Shalom, friends. This is Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, www.lovingkindness.co. Welcome to another Shear in Tanya. We are currently on chapter 11 in Tanya. We've been discussing this theme of the different qualities of souls, the quality of the soul of the Tzadik, and we're at the moment we're discussing the quality of soul of the Rasha. We spoke about this idea that the soul of the Rasha can be on the level of what's called Rasha v'tov lo and the Rasha v'ra lo, which basically means that you can have an individual who is called in Tanya terms, in other words, real terms of the quality of the soul. He's called a wicked person, but he has good to him, or a wicked person who has bad to him, or he is subjugated. In other words, the good that he has is subjugated to the evil in different amounts. And we spoke about the fact that in the first instance, the Rasha v'tov lo is a person who has a certain amount of good, which is subjugated to the evil, either a small amount or a greater amount. We spoke about a person who sometimes feels the need to commit a particular aveira, and he goes ahead and he commits the particular aveira in thought, in speech, or in action. Now we're going to get to the second level of Rasha. Rasha, who has that the problem is that the good that he has been so subjugated to the evil that he involves himself in, that it's going to manifest itself much more frequently than the first category of Rasha. Let's read it inside, and then it'll become a little bit clearer. So we said over here, a person can have this particular way about him that the evil that he has inside him is very, very strong. And the evil encloses itself in him in all three garments of bad, which means to say that he finds himself committing sins on all sorts of different levels and in a frequent manner. And it causes him basically to commit sins which are very strong sins, bad sins, and he commits these sins more frequently, and he commits more of these sins more frequently. But meanwhile, while he's involved in the process of all these sins that he does, while he's busy committing all these sins, he begins to regret what it is that he's doing. And there comes to him all sorts of thoughts of Teshuva. Those people who understand this concept will well know how this can happen to a person, that he really wants to be on the right path. But what happens is that life takes over and he ends up doing all sorts of things that he shouldn't have done. Either he acts out in a bad way, or he speaks things that he shouldn't speak, or alternatively, he thinks things that he shouldn't think. And then after this period of time, he regrets everything. And he says to himself, why did he do that? Why did he commit that particular aveira? Why did he have to speak so badly about so-and-so? Why did he have to think about doing such bad things? And this comes about because of the good that he has in his soul, which strengthens itself a little bit in the meanwhile. After he commits the aveira, he begins to think to himself, I shouldn't have really have done that. Of course, the first fellow that we spoke about last week is the type of fellow who does something wrong, and it can take a long time before he ends up doing something wrong again. But this fellow that we're speaking about, he's the type of person who commits aveira, he does the action, he says what he shouldn't have said, he thinks what he shouldn't have thought, and then immediately afterwards, again, he starts thinking to himself, what a terrible thing that he did. And now he wants to do the Teshuva. But he doesn't have such strength in him that he is able to be successful in eliminating the bad, lifrosh mechata'af, in order to separate himself from his sins, legamre, completely. Liyos moidev osev, in order to be on the category of somebody who admits what he did wrong, and then he says to himself, I'm going to now leave that particular Aveira. And about this, our rabbis have taught us, it says there, Rishaim Melaim Charatot, that the wicked are filled with regrets. Why are the wicked filled with regrets? But the wicked commit Aveiras. How come they're filled with regrets? The answer is because we're talking about the category of a wicked person who isn't so completely entirely wicked that every now and again he has this thought of, why did he do the particular Aveira? And he regrets what he did. This is what we're talking about. The wicked are filled with regrets. They're filled with regrets because they are involved in wicked activities, and as soon as they realize that they've done wrong, they begin to do the Teshuva that they should have done in the first instance. Shehem Rov HaRishaim. These are the majority of wicked people. Sheyesh bechinas tov benafsham adayin. That they still have an aspect of good in their souls still. However, mi she'eino mitcharet le'olam. A person who doesn't have any regrets ever, he never thinks about what he's doing. He just commits aveiras day in and day out, in action, in speech, in thought. Ve'ein ba'im lo hirei teshuva, and he never has any thoughts of doing repentance, kalal, at all. Nikra Rasha Viralo, he is called a wicked person who is completely subjugated to the bad. Altogether, he is just involved in bad activities. He can never get himself out of the bad activities. He sits at the very end of the idea that he just has to commit bad all the time. Sheharashi benafsho, that the bad in his soul, it remains in his soul, inside him all the time. Because it strengthens itself so much over the good, until eventually it just leaves him. Until the degree that it simply rests upon him in an encompassing manner, milamaila, above him. Therefore, Amru Razal, our rabbis have said, Kol be asara shkinta sharia. Amongst every 10 Jews who are standing together with each other, the Shekhinah rests. Which means to say that even if a Jew is on the level of Rasha Viralo, even if a Jew is on the level where he is evil and he is completely subjugated to the bad, in other words, he is involved in bad thoughts, bad speech, bad actions. Even though that's the case, the Shekhinah still rests upon him because it encompasses him. There is still a holiness that exists about him, but unfortunately, it never penetrated inside him. And this basically concludes chapter 11. In chapter 11, we discussed this idea again of the Rasha V'tov law and the Rasha V'ra law. Now we see it in practice. The Rasha V'tov law, where he has a bit of good in him. He's evil, but he has this drop of good, can exist on a level whereby what happens is, even though he does good, but sometimes he commits bad. He's going to do it in any case. And then there is the Rasha, who, whenever he's involved in activities, he gets caught up in the bad, and more frequently, he will involve himself in bad activities, in bad speech, in bad thoughts. And then there is the Rasha Viralo. And the Rasha Viralo is so bad that he is just completely overwhelmed with the bad that he never even thinks about doing Teshuva. And as a result of that, he can never get onto this path of moving ahead and ultimately becoming onto the next level of the Beinoni. And this is exactly where we enter into on chapter 12. So just as a brief summary, chapter 10 dealt with the Tzadik V'tov law and the Tzadik V'ra law. The chapter 11 dealt with the Rasha V'tov law and the Rasha V'ra law. And now chapter 12 is going to take us into the level of the soul of the person who is called the Beinoni. This book that we're learning, the Tanya, is called Sefer Shel Beinonim. It is the book of the intermediate or the average men, the fellow who is in the middle of Tzadik V'Rasha. He is in the middle of being righteous. He is not completely righteous. And in the middle of being wicked. He's not completely wicked either. But of course, we learned that the righteous person, he is a person who is involved in good, in thought, speech, and action. His only problem is that if he's a tzaddik viralo, he has not yet completely converted the bad that exists in his heart into good. It doesn't mean to say that he commits actual evil in any sense of the word whatsoever. He does not. But he has not yet fine-tuned himself to take the bad element that exists inside his heart and turn it over into good. The Rasha, on the other hand, is actively involved in bad activities. His mind thinks bad thoughts at times. His tongue speaks bad words at times. And his body puts into practice the bad things that he wants to involve himself in. Who then is the Beinoni? Who is the middle of the path person who the Tanya was written for? The Beinoni. Who? The middleman is the following. Shele'olam, always, ein hara gover kol kach. The bad never strengthens itself over him, lichvosh es ha'ir ketana, in order to conquer the small city. We'll remember back to what we said before, is that we have a small city, which is called the body, and the small city is filled with inhabitants. The inhabitants are the limbs of the body. And there are two kings who are fighting over the city because each one demands that the inhabitants should follow the laws and the requirements of that particular king. The good king, meaning the good inclination, wants to take over the entire body. The godly soul wants to take over the entire body so that the body should involve itself in good, in thought, speech, and action. The bad king wants to take these inhabitants, the limbs of the body, and that they should be completely subjugated to the will of this king involved in bad activities, in thought, in speech, and action. Now there's a real war going on here. Now the Beinoni sits in the middle, and he sits in the middle in the following sense. The Beinoni never allows the bad that exists within him to ever manifest itself so that it should actually do something bad or even speak something bad. In order to enclose itself in the body to make the person sin. So if a person wants to know, is he holding on the level of Beinoni, it's very easy to identify. Because the Beinoni has an element of bad inside him, but the bad never manifests itself. Dahainu, which means to say, the three garments of the animalistic soul, which are the thought, speech, and action, which is from the side of the klipa, of the husk, of this peel, of the shell, it never strengthens itself upon the person, al nefesh ha'elokit, over his godly soul, in order to clothe itself inside the body. Remember, we have these two inclinations. We have the nefesh ha'bahamit, the animalistic soul, and we have the nefesh ha'elokit, the godly soul. With the Beinoni, he exists in such a frame of mind that he never allows the nefesh ha'bahamit to have a say in actually causing him to commit a particular aveira. It exists there within himself, but he never allows it to manifest itself in reality. B'moach, b'peh, in the intellect, in the mind, in the mouth, and in all the 248 limbs, in order to cause them to sin. And to cause them to become impure, to make them impure, God forbid. Rak, how does it work? It comes out that the three garments of the godly soul, these are the only ones by themselves that enclose the body. And these are the thought, speech, and action of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. So far what we've got with the Beinoni, now we had the Tzadik, We know that the Tzadik, he never did any bad, neither in thought, speech, or action. But the Tanya tells us that the Beinoni seems to have the same behavior. He also does not commit an Aveira in thought, speech, or action. Velo avar Aveira miyamav. And the Beinoni never committed the sin ever in his life. Velo ya'avor le'olam. And he never will commit a sin in his life. Velo nikra alav shem Rasha. And he will never be called by the name wicked. Afilu sha'a achas. Not even for one moment. V'rega echad. And one time period or one moment. Kol yamav. All the days of his life. And of course, everybody who's listening to the Shear will immediately ask himself and say, this makes no sense whatsoever. We learned that the Tzadik, the righteous person, will never come to commit an Aveira, neither in thought, speech, nor action. The Tanya tells us that the Beinoni, the middleman, behaves in exactly the same way. He does not commit an Aveira ever in his life, in thought, speech, or action. The question is, if we say that, apparently it sounds to me like nobody could ever aspire to the level of Beinoni, because if, according to the Tanya, he never committed a sin in thought, speech, and action, well, even if I'm striving to reach the level of Beinoni, I certainly must have at some point in time in my life committed an Aveira in thought, speech, and action. Unless, of course, I'm a Tzadik. And if I'm a Tzadik, I don't have to worry about this any longer. Therefore, what the Tanya is telling us is that from the moment a person reaches the level of Beinoni, at that point in time, he takes on a new level of consciousness, a new level of behavior, a new level of power to his soul, whereby he is elevated to a level where from that point onwards, he will never come to commit an Aveira, neither in thought, nor speech, nor action. However, Mahus va'atzmus nefesh ha'elokis, the existence, the essence of the reality of the godly soul, shehein ese bechinosea, which are the 10 aspects of the godly soul, lo lahen levadan hamelucha. It is not only to them that they have the rulership over the body, v'hamimshala, and the rulership, be'ir katana, on the small city, on the body, ki im be'etim mezumanim, except at certain times. Kamo b'shas kriyat shema utfilah. For example, at the time of reading the Shema and Tfilah, everybody gets this feeling. Certainly, the average person will know exactly what the Tanya is talking about over here if he begins to fit into this category, if he begins to elevate himself to this level. It's an amazing thing. He's reading Kriyat Shema, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and he begins to feel this great enthusiasm. He begins to feel this closeness to Hashem. He begins to feel like he's going to expire in divine ecstasy. He begins to daven Shmona Israel, Baruch Atah Hashem. He feels so close to Hashem. Shomea Tefillah, I believe it. God, you answer all my prayers. He feels fantastic. He feels on fire. Shehi Sha'as Moichin de Gadlus Lemaila. And this is what we call the time of the Moichin de Gadlus above, which means the mature mentality, the mature brains. What does that mean exactly? There are 2 aspects that are discussed in Kabbalah and in Chassidut. One is called Moichin de Katnut, which means small mentality, small brains, or immaturity. And there's another category which is called Moichin de Gadlus, maturity, when your brain expands, when your mind expands. I like to give an example. I've given it many times over, but I like to give this example many times in any case because I think it's quite practical. If we take the situation of a child likes ice cream. And let's say, for example, the child's father is one of the wealthiest people in the world, and the child's father could, in fact, if he wanted to, purchase the biggest ice cream factories in the world. And anyway, he's walking with his child along the beach, and as he's walking, he sees somebody selling ice cream, and the son starts crying out. It's a 3-year-old child, 4 years old. He's walking on the beach. He says, "Daddy, Daddy, ice cream, ice cream." He wants his ice cream. So Daddy goes up to the ice cream seller. How much is the ice cream? It costs $1. It's fantastic. He gives the fellow $1, and he gives the child the ice cream. Unfortunately, the child can't hold on to the ice cream, and the scoop of ice cream falls down onto the sand and it's gone. Immediately, the child begins to cry out in great pain. He's lost his ice cream. The whole world has fallen down. We call this moichin de katnut. You see, the poor child thinks that the whole world has collapsed. He thinks there's no more ice cream in the world. He thinks that if the ice cream fell now, for sure his dad could never get another ice cream again. I mean, he got it now, but what are the chances he could ever get it again? But if he had moichin de katnut, he would understand that his father is one of the wealthiest people in the world. If he wanted to, he could buy all the ice cream factories in the entire world. He could have as much ice cream as he wanted to. It's nothing for the father to go out and purchase another ice cream for his son. But the son sees it as if he's lost the entire world. I like to tell the story that once I was walking down the road and I saw a young boy. He had his hands in his mother's hand. They were walking down the street. He must have been 4 years old. And they were going to throw away some newspaper, which is placed in Israel. They have these bins along the way, which has a small opening on the top. And if you put the paper, the newspaper, in the top of the opening, it then rolls over and goes into the big bin. But it's very high up, at least for a 4-year-old child walking with his mother. And he had this particular newspaper that he wanted to put, and the mother took the newspaper and she was about to throw it away into this bin for recycling. And the child began to get very irritated, started screaming, he wants to do it, he wants to do it. So the mother lifted up the child, put the newspaper in his hand, and he put the newspaper into this bin. And afterwards, there was a big smile on his face, as if he'd achieved wonders. This is called moichin de katnut. The child doesn't realize what's really going on. Nothing is really being achieved over here. In fact, when the child grows up, it might even be likely the child will have no desire to throw paper away and to recycle it. They have no interest whatsoever. But as a child, he imagines that this is the most important thing in the world. This is what's called moichin de katnut. Moichin de katnut is when, for example, the person realizes that he could buy every single ice cream factory in the world, and the ice cream fell over, and he says, big deal, I'll get another ice cream. That's on the physical level. On the spiritual level, we can think of it like this. When a person is praying to God for a particular thing that he needs, and he doesn't get it, and he can't understand why is he not getting it, he feels frustrated. It's because he lives in a world of what's called moichin de katnut. He can't seem to see God's presence, can't seem to understand it. Many years later, perhaps, he becomes wealthy or he gets married or whatever it is. And in retrospect, he sees why the particular events happened as they should have in that particular time. And he now realizes why everything took place as it took place. He says, now I understand it. Now he understands it. But imagine if he would be thinking those same thoughts at the time that the events occurred when he was praying and his tefillah wasn't answered at that point in time. We call that moichin de gadlus. Suddenly he's able to understand everything that is happening. Shabbos is, for example, a time of moichin de gadlut, which means to say that if a person prepares correctly for Shabbos and he then observes the Shabbos as it should be observed, then all the food is prepared, all the learning is ready for him, the day is spread out for him and ready to welcome. He doesn't have to do anything on the day because he's prepared himself for the day. He can enter the day and experience the holiness of what Shabbos is about. This is called moichin de gadlut. But then, when Shabbos is over, and suddenly he has to go back to reality, he goes back to his ordinary day activities. It's no longer that the food is ready for him and everything has been cooked and the day goes by in a normal way. Normal activities have to take place. He does shopping. He has to do his exercise. He has to attend to medical appointments. He's got to attend to all sorts of activities and work and whatever it is that he has to do. And he thinks to himself, what happened to the spirituality of Shabbos? It's as if it's gone. Because what happens to the person is he drops down and he goes back to what's called moichin de katnut. He goes back to immaturity. He can't understand what's happening to him at this point in time. On Shabbos, everything was understood. Everything was relaxed. He understood what it was all about. He enjoyed the day. It was holy to him. When the week begins again, he doesn't know how to get himself into that mood that he can feel like he felt on Shabbos. because he drops to a level of moichin the katnut immediately when Shabbos comes out, or perhaps not immediately, the next day already. He wakes up and he's back to square one again. Can't understand why life is so restricted once again. So when a person is praying, we call that in the worlds above moichin the gadlut lemaila. That means to say that there is a mature level that is awoken from above, which means to say that when a person is praying and he closes his eyes and he begins to cleave to Hashem, suddenly he feels a power. He feels a cleaving to Hashem. He's loving this prayer. Why? Because Hashem has opened up the way for him to experience the beauty of what prayer is. But there's a strange thing that's going on, as we're going to see in a moment. So, v'gam lemata hisha'as ha'koshev, and also below, it is a fitting time, l'chol adam, for every person. Because why? She'az mekushar chochmah bina v'da'as shelo. A person connects his wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, meaning his chabad. He connects these three sefirot. He connects his mentalities, laHashem, to God, la'amik da'atoi begedulas ein sof baruch hu, in order to deepen his mind, in order to deepen his connection with the greatness of the Infinite One, blessed is He. And he awakens up in him now the love, like fiery flames of fire, in the right hand side of the right ventricle of his heart, which is the godly side of the heart, as opposed to the left ventricle, which is filled with the blood, which has the animalistic soul contained within it. And there, then he begins to be stirred with this tremendous ecstasy, with this tremendous love. He cleaves to Hashem, and he just wants to fulfill the Torah and the mitzvahs out of love. And this is exactly the matter which is explained when we read the Kriyat Shema, which is a Torah mitzvah. Now, the person is saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, he says. He has such a love for Hashem that he begins to feel this connection. And all the brachos that we do before the Kriyat Shema, ula achareha, and afterwards, shehen midrabanan, which are rabbinical in nature, hein hachana lekiyum hakriyat Shema. They are the preparation for the fulfillment of the reading of the Shema, as it is described in another place. So when a person begins to read these brachot of Kriyat Shema, and he thinks about all the celestial worlds, and he thinks about all the angels, and all these different things, if one pays attention to the words that we're reading in the brachot before we say the Kriyat Shema, one's mind begins to expand. One thinks of the greatness of God. And then when we say the Kriyat Shema, we begin to love Hashem. I'm thinking of the unity of God. I'm thinking that everything in the world is exactly as it should be. It makes sense to me. I don't know necessarily why I'm struggling, but it's all making sense to me. I'm loving this relationship with God. And then we see that with this Beinoni fellow, that the bad, which is in the left ventricle of the heart, is subjugated and nullified to the good. In other words, the bad that sits in the heart of the Beinoni. Remember, he's not expressing the bad, but the bad is sitting there. The bad bows down to the good, as if to say, I cannot interfere with what you're involved in. An amazing thing happens when the person is saying the Kriyat Shema, when the person is saying the Shemona Esrei, he becomes filled with such a love of God that almost he forgets that there is even a negative inclination resting inside him that could convince him of doing anything evil in the world. I mean, if you were to stop, if this person here were to stop himself in the middle of prayer and say, what is life all about? He becomes so filled with this emotion of godliness that he can't think of anything else but God. He doesn't even believe there's a physical world out there. He doesn't need to believe it. He doesn't need to think about taking care of his physical needs. All that he wants at that point in time is to cleave to Hashem. Well, if the person is not feeling that, then of course he's not on this level of the Beinoni. He might even be, where are we going to put him, even in terms of the Rasha? At least the Rasha, there are sometimes that he has certain moments that come out. But with the Beinoni, this is the frequent thing. It happens there's a spurt that comes out to him, and he suddenly says to himself, everything is about God. Hamit pashet b'chalal yamani, and it spreads in the right ventricle of the heart. Me'chochma bina v'da'as, from the wisdom, from the understanding and the knowledge, from the chabad shebemuach, in his mind, hamukusharim begedulas ein sof baruch hu, which is connected to the greatness of the infinite one, blessed is he. Aval, but achara tefillah, after the fellow wraps up his tefillin, after he puts his talis away, we know this type of a feeling. Everybody can relate to it. We put the talis on, we feel holy. We put the tefillin on. Look at me, everybody. Look how holy I am. Take a picture of me. Look how holy I am. And we're really feeling it. We're feeling this experience, like we're connecting to God. But you know, after an hour of davening, or 45 minutes, I don't know how much people can take of it. Afterwards, he wraps up his tefillin, he puts the talis away, and it's as if it never happened. So afterwards, pistalkus hamoikin de gadlus, when the mature level, that's what we call it, the mature level, when the mind of the great expansive mind condition, as we described above, this level of maturity, it's called maturity because we know that a mature person values what that's all about, but the immature person does not value it. Those people who go to shul and they want to sit and they want to talk, they don't understand what this is. Why? Because they're existing on this level of moichin de katnut. They can't even see the pleasure involved in connecting with God when they're sitting in the shul, when they're davening Shemona Esrei. They just don't get it. So they want to spend the time rather involved in social chit-chat. So they exist in a world of moichin de katnut. But if for a moment they would be inspired, they say, this is a place of God. This is an opportunity for me to touch God, touch the Creator, experience what it means to be cleaving to the Creator. They'd enter into this world of moichin de gadlut that we're speaking about, Ein Sof Baruch Hu, of the Infinite One. Hare, what happens? Hara chozer v'ne'or. Now what happens is that the bad returns and it awakens itself b'chalal asmali, in the left ventricle of the heart. And it begins to desire the desires of all the things in this world and all of its pleasures. So you see, once this fellow was davening, he's thinking to himself, do I need ice cream? I don't need any ice cream. I'm just enjoying this prayer. I'm just loving this experience. Puts the talis and tefillin away. Does he want the experience anymore? No. Now it's time for ice cream. Now it's time for a waffle. It's breakfast time. What are we having? It's time for the waffle and syrup and ice cream on the waffle. So it's going to have a good time. Suddenly he forgot God. What happened? Because the Beinoni is existing in a state whereby there is still an aspect of bad that exists within him. It never manifests itself. The fellow who eats the waffle, he's not doing anything wrong. Unless, of course, he becomes a glutton with the waffle, then he's going to do something wrong. He's not doing anything wrong. He's not committing an avera. He made the bracha on the waffle. He enjoyed it. He had the ice cream. There's nothing wrong with the ice cream. What happened is, though, he fell. He fell from that high level of cleaving to God, and he suddenly returned back to reality. Physical world, physical needs, physical desires. And even though it's not prohibited, no problem, he returns to that state as if the previous state never existed. Rak, it is only it is only because it's not only to him itself, meaning the godly soul, that it has the mishpat hamelucha, the ability to have rulership, this rulership over the city. The thing is that with this Beinoni is that he doesn't have the ability to bring out his desires from potential into reality, to clothe themselves in the limbs of the body, in action, in speech, and in thought. Mamash, really. in order to go deeply with his mind into the pleasures of this world. How will he fulfill the desires of his heart? See, the Beinoni, even though he returns to a state of moichin de katnut after he davens, even though he forgets that kind of relationship, that strong cleaving that he had to God, he does return back to reality. But the truth of the matter is that because he exists on the level of like the tzaddik, so to speak, he never allows the bad to manifest itself in reality. He will not go out and eat something that is prohibited. He will not eat pork all of a sudden. Just because he lost that relationship with God and that feeling of cleaving doesn't mean he goes out to eat pork. But it does mean that he returns back to a state whereby he kind of forgets the cleaving experience that he had with God. And he continues with his normal activities. Until when? Until he davens again. Or until he engages in a mitzvah. Or until he does something that connects him back to God again. But until such a time that occurs, he goes back to his normal activities. But he never lets the evil manifest itself, neither in thought, speech, or action. Even though he is not cleaving to the good in a complete way, he is not cleaving to the evil in a way that manifests itself, that he performs a particular aveira in thought, in speech, and in action. We're going to stop this shiur for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet. You can find my site on www.lovingkindness.co. And I hope you've enjoyed this shiur. If you did, please do click on the like button under the video over here in YouTube, and click on the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. Click on the bell button to be notified of future shiurim. As always, I welcome all interaction. If you want to send me an email, please go to my site and fill in the contact form. I'm happy to discuss all matters of life and Torah, and I'll be delighted to be in touch with you. In the meantime, I wish you everything of the best, and I look forward to another shiur and to being in touch with you in the future. Wishing you the best. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.